Hello friends, it's good to be with you. I am so glad you're here and I am so stoked that you are interested in becoming a therapist. It is a very, very exciting path, one that I am on and not officially licensed yet, but I am excited to share all that I've learned so far about becoming a therapist, the different paths to becoming a therapist, and I want to shine a light down the path in case it's helpful for anyone who needs it. For those that are new here, my name is Julia Sunderland. I am in school. I'm in a doctorate program right now to become a clinical psychologist with a focus on somatics. And I am in year 4 of 5 years of the program. It's just been an amazing experience and I'm so glad I'm doing it. And there are a lot of things that I wish I had known going into becoming a therapist that I want to share with you today. So what are we going to cover? I want to first talk about the difference between going to an official program, grad school, versus the school of life. I also want to talk about the different types of degrees that you can get, master's, doctorate, how to choose between them, and the types of degrees within each of those categories. And then there's choosing schools to apply for and all of the pieces within choosing schools. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about student loans. Probably one of the bigger downsides of going to school, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world to take out student loans. So that's something that I want to talk about at the end of our video. But starting with grad school or the school of life. Once I started my program, I met a few different people who actually weren't going to grad school, but becoming healers. So I attended a few different weekend training programs and I met really incredible healers who didn't go to grad school, didn't get their master's or doctorate or anything like that, but they had been getting trainings in an ad hoc way over the course of many years to become the healers that they are. And this is something I did not think about when I was applying to school. You do have the option to go to school or not go to school. For someone who's very risk adverse like myself, I didn't even contemplate not going to school. I wanted to be able to be licensed, have a degree, and have the security of all of those things. But the security comes with a cost. Student loans are big. The tuition to go to a school is substantial. I don't know exactly how it breaks down between the cost of going to a grad school or the cost of doing a handful of trainings to become an expert, but in a more ad hoc, a la carte way. I have not done the calculations, but the main thing I wish I had known going into the path of becoming a healer is that you have a choice. You have a choice to go to school or not go to school. And I think this is really important for folks who might be neurodiverse, might have educational trauma, might really not enjoy going to school and having homework, having all these assignments. Like, I don't want you to think that you can't become a healer if you can't do school. There are so many other paths to becoming a healer who's responsible and very well educated that isn't just the accredited, prestigious programs of grad schools. Now, if you are someone like me who wants to go to school and get a degree, I'm with you. I very much understand that. That is the path that I'm going down. I actually originally wanted to become a massage therapist, but in kind of this soul-searching process that I went through, I realized that I wanted to really dive into psychology and add in somatics on the side rather than dive into the body and then add in psychology. So that was my own choice. Once I figured that out, had to decide what degree do I want to get. In terms of degrees, you can get a doctorate or a master's, and it is a big decision point. I will summarize what I heard from folks in terms of the differences, and I want to just caveat that this is what I've heard, this is what I've gathered. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If you have any other perspectives on things, then please feel free to comment below. I would be glad to hear it and have a conversation around it. Long story short, my understanding is a master's is a fantastic way to quickly become a therapist with a very good skill set, skill base, knowledge of psychology, but there's less of an opportunity to craft your own voice. Whereas with a doctorate, you have more time to marinate in all of the psychology things, which does mean that it takes longer to get the doctorate. It does cost more, but one of the big pieces that I heard in talking to people was that you're able to craft your own voice through the dissertation process. So with the master's, you don't have to write a dissertation. You're more learning what's out there, and there's less of an opportunity to process it internally and produce something out into the world that is your own. Whereas with the doctorate, because you're in school for a longer period of time and you have to write this long paper that is kind of your own perspective, and you're adding to the body of work within psychology that is uniquely your own, there's more of an opportunity to process what you've learned and add to the lexicon, add to the body of work. A person who was in a master's program but decided to change to a doctorate said that in the master's, it felt a little bit more like regurgitating what you've already learned, whereas with the doctorate, there's more time to process it and make something that's your own. If becoming a therapist is something that you want to do sooner rather than later, you feel a time crunch, you want to get in, get out, and start practicing as a therapist, then the master's may be a good option for you. If you have a little bit more tolerance for taking a little bit more time, if you're interested in creating your own body of work, then the doctorate might be a good option for you. The other pieces to consider is if you have fewer years in school, you'll also have less student loans, you'll have less debt, you'll have less tuition. That could be desirable for some folks and a higher priority, whereas with the doctorate, it will take a little bit more time, more tuition, more student loans. Now, there is a little bit of variability in terms of how much people are paid based on master's or doctorate. So you could say that a doctorate, you do have more student loans coming out of school, but you also are able to make higher hourly rate, and that might offset the difference between master's and doctorate. The other piece is what I've heard from folks, and it might just be hearsay, is if you want to become a teacher or if you want to write something, having a doctorate is a little bit more helpful because you've had that time to marinate and stuff a little bit longer than if you were just doing a master's. Now, double clicking into master's, the paths to become a therapist at a master's level, there are two different degrees. You can be an LMFT or you can be a LCSW. LMFT is licensed marriage and family therapist. The other route is an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. I personally don't know too much about the differences because I didn't go down this path of master's. I went down the path of doctorate. So I can't speak to the specific details and the differences between the two programs. My understanding, again, from a little bit of a distance, is the LCSW has more classes on systemic issues and how it affects psychology, how it affects people, whereas the LMFT has more of a individual focused, relational focus. But don't quote me on that. I can't speak from personal experience on those two different degrees. That would require a little bit more research. Now, the different degrees for a doctorate level. There are 3 paths that you can take within the psychology world at a doctorate level. There is a MD, becoming a psychiatrist who can prescribe medication. There's a PhD, which focuses more on research. PhDs are able to do clinical work, but the programs definitely have a little bit more of a research focus. And then there's a PsyD, which is the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology, which is the program that I'm in. And it is largely focused on becoming a clinician, working face-to-face with people. Now, I know more about the path that I'm walking. But an important difference that I learned once I was in the program is that PsyDs are kind of the most expensive one to do. MDs, also it's expensive, like you have to go to medical school and that is quite costly, but at some point you are in your residency, you're getting paid for that. Now with a PhD, there's a chance that you might actually be paid as a PhD to do research. In comparison with a PsyD, for all 5 years of school, you are paying tuition and you're also working for free, which is quite costly, especially when you're doing it in San Francisco like myself. So it's just something to consider. There's a difference in the type of work that you'll be doing, and then there's also a difference in the financial implications. The thing that was my highest priority was becoming a clinician, working face-to-face with people, and really marinating in psychodynamics. That was what I was really excited about. So I focused more on PsyD programs than I did on the other two. Now, how did I make my own decision on this? I, at the end of the day, wanted to prioritize PsyD programs. However, I did apply to one master's program to be an LMFT. The way that the cookie crumbled was that I got into a PsyD program, but I did not get into the LMFT program. So I went the PsyD path, which was what I was prioritizing anyway, because I wanted the option of writing books, of teaching. I wanted to make something that was my own, and the dissertation process really interested me. Now, how do you choose the schools that you apply to? For me, I had a pretty narrow scope. I knew I wanted to stay in the Bay Area, and I wanted to focus on, as I said, PsyD and LMFT programs. I knew about the Wright Institute and USF, as well as California Institute of Integral Studies. The big piece here that I want to talk about that I'm most familiar with is the difference between APA accredited programs and non-APA accredited programs. So the APA is a large accrediting body that basically requires schools to teach certain classes in order to be accredited by them. I ended up at CIIS, which is not an accredited program by the APA. It is accredited by a different accrediting body, but it is not accredited by the APA. It has some implications for your practicum options, your internship options, and possibly for some long-term work opportunities. At first, I was really, really worried about CIS not being accredited by the APA. I was a little stressed about, okay, what does this mean? Does it matter for me? Does it not matter for me? So why is CIS not accredited by the APA? CIS wants to emphasize psychodynamics and only have a small amount of CBT classes, which doesn't align to the APA's requirements around teaching CBT, which means that CIS is not accredited by the APA. But that is something that I actually really respected, and I am really glad to have gotten so much psychodynamic training. And at the end of the day, not having an APA accreditation means that I can only go to a certain number of practicum sites. There's a fewer number of practicum sites that are available for me. It's also, there's a fewer number of internship sites, which, yes, it's a little stressful, but for me, I felt like the psychodynamic training was a higher priority than the practicum availabilities and the internship availabilities. Also, an unintended benefit of this was that my school's internship sites were only in California, which means that I could stay in California and get my internship site. Whereas if I was a part of the APA or an APA accredited program, I would have to apply to schools across the country, and it would be a total shit show. It would be totally up to the gods in terms of where I landed. It could be in any other state, any other program, and I'm really glad that I was able to stay in California for my internship. Okay, so we've talked about the traditional and non-traditional paths to becoming a therapist, the different traditional degrees that you can get to become a therapist, a little bit about choosing a school, and now to conclude, I want to talk a little bit about student loans. I think student loans get a terrible rap in this country, which is quite unfortunate. there's a huge stigma towards student loans. It seems like one of the most irresponsible things to do to take out considerable amount of student loans. But two things come to mind for me that counter this. And these are the two things that helped me get comfortable with becoming a therapist and taking out student loans to do so. The first is that so many people take out mortgages that are much bigger than my student loans. In terms of like mortgages, people have huge mortgages. Now, someone might say, yes, with a mortgage, you're buying a house, which you could then resell. Agreed. But I am investing in a long-term career, which I have a really high certainty of making a good amount of money from that I can then pay off. So for me, the stigma of student loans feels like it falls apart when I think about how people take out mortgages to buy houses. I am viewing my own student loans and this path of becoming a therapist as an investment property, almost like an investment house. And of course, there's risk. There's risk when you buy a house, and there's risk when you get student loan debt. And that's something that I'm willing to do to follow the path of my heart. The other thing that helped me get comfortable with student loan debt is so many MDs have considerable amount of student loans out of medical school. And for me, that helped me get comfortable with the amount of student loans that I have. I may not be making as much as some MDs out of school, but I know that I'll be making definitely six figures once I'm licensed and my practice is up and running, which means that I have a clear path to making money. Unlike with some other master's degrees or other doctorate programs where there's less of a clear path to paying off your student loans because the return on the other side is a little bit less clear. For me, what helped get comfortable with taking out student loans was recognizing other people take out debt, other people make investments in properties, and I'm seeing this as an investment in myself, which I got comfortable with having pretty good returns. And there are also other students who take out similar amounts of debt who are able to pay it off because they have a high salary on the other side, which I believe is possible with a master's or doctorate to become a therapist. The final piece that I'll add in here is that I created a spreadsheet to help myself get comfortable with what things could look like, both in school and costs, as well as out of school making money. And that was the piece that I really needed. Depending on how many clients I have and my hourly rate, like what would an annual salary look like? And by doing that for myself, I got really comfortable. I was able to calm down the critical, analytical part of my mind and build some confidence on going down this path that is a little nerve-wracking. I left a very high-earning job to make no money for essentially 5 years and take out student loans instead, which is kind of scary. I found that making a spreadsheet, crunching some numbers for myself, helped me build some confidence around this and quiet some of the high anxiety parts of my mind that really want to be financially secure and resource secure. If you have any questions or any comments on what I have shared today, please let me know in the comments below. I'd happily answer any questions and give more of my experience as well if it's useful for you and your path. If you are thinking about becoming a therapist, I am just so stoked. We need more therapists in this world. We are going through crazy psychological transformation as a community, as a global community, and we need more people to help usher and Sherpa that transformation into being. And I'm just really stoked that you're thinking about it. I wish you the best on your path. If you want to stick around for more therapy content, as well as somatics and self-love content, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Ciao.